Hey folks, Judd Zulgad, Andrew Krammer, 1500ESPN.com. Thanks for coming to the website. Day two, Andrew, from Mankato Vikings training camp now in full swing through 2 days. However, because of the CBA, we have not seen the Vikings in full pads yet. We're going to see that on Tuesday. Tell me, what's your expectation as we see these guys put on pads for the first time in the 2015 season?
Yeah, we spoke with Mike Zimmer after practice today, and he said, well, we're expecting it to be pretty sloppy, and that's kind of how it's going to be when it's the first time you can be in pads since last December when they played their last regular season game. So I expect it to be a defense winning this, because that's usually how it goes in these training camps anyway, because the receivers themselves aren't used to going up against press coverage. They've been running around in shorts and helmets this entire time. Really, there's little contact you can make between a defensive back and really offensive linemen have to really get back into the swing of things. I'm interested, though, to see how long does it take a guy like Anthony Barr, who's had some conditioning issues, to get back onto the field. He wouldn't answer questions today about that when asked, but he was running conditioning drills on the side with head trainer Eric Sugarman, just doing some running and basic sprinting and stuff like that. We'll really be able to tell how far along he is and how long he has to sit out when you get into these padded practices. That, and I want to see how Adrian Peterson's running when he actually can be not tackled but touched, and there's actually a defensive rush as opposed to just guys in shorts trying to defend each other. So I'm interested to see how he fits into the fold. I want to see how Teddy Bridgewater throws the ball to Mike Wallace. There's a lot to be gleaned now when the Vikings start with the pads tomorrow.
And now I think that the tough thing, too, for teams around this league is back in the old days, you'd practice full pads all the time.
Yeah.
There are so few days now that I would guess that the coaching staff is going to have this drilled down to, okay, we've got X amount of days in pads here, so it's not just let's go practice football, it's let's get specific things done, correct?
Exactly, yeah. And Mike Zimmer said one interesting thing, too, earlier when he said we want to instill more inside run drills this training camp that they did last training camp, meaning that's just going to create more contact. He wants to create a tougher mentality with this team, and really you can't start that until you get the pads on anyway. Mm-hmm. And Mike said something interesting, too, today after practice, complaining about the fact that you can't do any kind of press coverage up until this point. He's a guy who loves his defensive backs, loves to focus on coaching those guys. And as you said, Joe, the CBA really does limit it when not only are there no two-a-days, but you really can't even put pads on until almost August, a month before you start your regular season.
As a longtime defensive backs coach, too, the rules of 2015 must drive Mike Zimmer up the wall, right? Because you can't do press coverage in the offseason because you can't have contact. You can't do press coverage until full pads go on. Once you get into games, ticky-tack fouls are called left and right. Mike Zimmer has to look at pro football in 2015 and say sometimes, what the hell have I gotten myself into here? Because I'm a defensive guy, I'm a defensive backs guy, and my guys got no chance. And oh, by the way, I'm in a division with Matthew Stafford, Jay Cutler, and Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and the rules themselves have been leaned toward the offense and trying to create more offense and more scoring. That's what the NFL wants, and you see that too with the CBA, kind of, and not just with press coverage, but tackling. They haven't been able to tackle at all throughout all this. How are you supposed to teach tackling when you can't do it?
And no one can tackle now, by the way.
Exactly. And
I mean, they're bad at it. Teams are bad at it. Players are bad at it.
And common sense is it's because now the CBA that was instilled in 2011 takes away those kinds of two-a-days, and some veteran players certainly do like that, but when you have a very young roster that these Vikings do have, you need that extra time. And sure, they get an extra preseason game, but they're still limited to those rules of when they can and cannot hit, and at least it starts tomorrow for this team.
I've decided, Andrew Krammer, that Rick Spielman, Zimmer, and Rob Brzezinski, the Vikings cap guy, have done something genius this offseason that didn't occur to me till now. Adrian Peterson and Mike Wallace are essentially on one-year make-good contracts. Yeah. Mike Wallace has been, now we heard in Miami that he was a cancer in the locker room. The last time we saw him playing for the Dolphins in Week 17, I think he had a sideline confrontation and was benched after that. And supposedly, erroneously, it was reported that when he was traded to the Vikings in March, he was not pleased about it. Mike Wallace now has been the last player off the field on almost a daily basis in off-season programs or now in training camp. He has been a guy who's talked about not only being a good player here, but actually going into the locker room and being a veteran presence, a leader. And Mike Wallace has been nothing like what we heard about. Mike Wallace, to me, has looked at his situation and said, okay, after this season, I have a lot of cash coming in 2016 or 17, but I can also be cut with no penalty to the Vikings. This is a completely changed man, and I think the Vikings have done something genius here, which is you've got a quality wide receiver in camp now with the team who's a deep threat, who is motivated beyond belief.
Yes, and the Vikings got him in that trade in March from Miami, really for peanuts, for a 5th-round pick, but in turn they had to take on his contract untouched. Well, they decided to take it on untouched, and he's going to be paid $9.9 million this year. $3 million of that's currently guaranteed, but all of it will be guaranteed when he's on the roster week 1. And to your point, Judd, the Vikings have not locked themselves into any veterans on this team, really. They restructured Chad Greenway multiple times. Adrian Peterson's restructure is still a 1-year deal. And then you talk about Wallace being a guy who's going to be very highly motivated, and basically in a contract year, because his salary spikes up to about $11 million after this year, and none of it is guaranteed.
Completely genius. Motivated Adrian Peterson, a deep threat, and now it all comes together. And Cordero Patterson, you might want to get motivated yourself. Although today he actually made a couple nice catches, but you can still see it when there's times where you see the coaching staff watch him run a route and they just shake their heads and say, no, that's not what we want, Cordero.
Yeah, and with Cordero too, I actually noticed a little bit. He got some time with the ones and some heavier 2 tight end packages, and so there's something you can see. Okay, they're trying to carve out a little role for him at this point, but there's a long way to go, and he's still got a lot to prove when it comes to just being an overall consistent wide receiver.
He's Andrew Krammer. I'm Judd Zulgad. Check out both our work at 1500ESPN.com. Of course, you can hear me with Phil Mackey weekdays, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. as well. We're down here, Phil and I, in Mankato on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then all next week. Thanks for coming to the website, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you soon about training camp.